is the single balcony brake wagon. Shown here, it's in 45mm version. The kit comes in 32 or 45. So this is what you will be building by following the instructions. This video also details or contains parts for construction of the twin balcony version. Both very similar construction. Undercarriage is identical, basic chassis is identical. Obviously the only difference is you've got a balcony extra. But ducket construction, everything else is the same for both. If you're building the twin veranda version, that's the one that looks like this, compared to the single veranda one, then the twin veranda one has got a few different parts, but the basic construction is identical to the single veranda. So I'll first of all show you the parts for the twin, and then it will move on and show you the parts for the single, but the general process and setting up is the same. So this is for the twin. So you start off with a base, a side, got some fairly small parts that are easy to break off, so do go careful. Side slots in, take another side, slot that in on the other side. So that's the part we're making up. Then take the part, there's two of these that are identical. As you can see, there's nothing on either side of them. They slot in, as you can see there. And then we're holding it together. We turn over. And we find the other one exactly the same. And we put that at the other end. And then we tend to put an elastic band around the whole thing to hold it together, which I will do. Being careful not to break any parts off. So that will hold that together. So that's the major change between the single and the twin. At this point, I'll now move on to doing the single and the gluing, which is identical. And then we'll come back to the slight difference between this and the single. So that'll be the next section. This is the build of the single balcony Guards Wagon. The basic structure are the same for both 45 and 32mm. The change is in the underframes between the 45 and the 32. So the first bit we're going to do is to assemble the top frame, which is the same for both. So the parts you see in front of you are the parts you're going to need. There is a wrong way of putting this together, so it's important you watch what I do. So that's the base. So you've got 1, 2, 3 and 2 holes there, and this is a side. Again, 1, 2, 3. You need to line up those 3 and slot them in, and make sure that the gap you have there is the same end as the 2 holes there. And you add one to the other side, and again making sure that the gaps are the same. And take this piece, which is the back. Again, we've got 1, 2 tangs and 2 big holes there. So we drop that in. And at the top, a little notch and a little tang there that goes in, and the same for the other side. And keep it nicely firm pushed together. The last item is this one. It's very obvious where this one's going to go. You've got 2 tangs, 2 holes, so it's best to slot it in if you can see as I'm doing this at a slight angle. Just sort of slide it along on the top, drop the bottom holes in and push back, and everything should line up. And then with your first elastic band, over and over the back, then roll it down until it's nearly at the bottom. Then we add our second elastic band. Again, try not to break any of the bits off, and we leave this one set towards the top. And put it down onto a table, just squeeze everything in. It's all nice and firm, so all the joints are pushed in. And the next job we have to do is to go around and glue, which I will point to, the inside. So we put glue down into the corners, and we put glue in the top corners, and we put some glue halfway down, as you can see. Then we go along the bottom and we glue in 3 places, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. I'll have to go ahead and do that. Now for this I use the thin glue. So I put a thin glue on down to the corner, into the corner, corner, and corner, and then sort of 3 or 4 locations along the side. I couple it at the back, and then down the side again. Oops, try not to get it everywhere else. So at the end, 3 say at the end there. 1 underneath the door. Right, now we can move up. Put 1 in just below the window, and 1 just in on top. Making sure it does go in. Right, that's better. Again, just below the window, just on top, just below the window, just on top, just below the window, and just on top. And just give them a little bit of a rub in to make sure the glue starts to capillary action between the joins. We don't end up with a horrible blob. Ditto along the bottom where you've done it. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Right, have a quick check around that everything is still firmly pushed in and square, and we should now put that aside for about 5 to 10 minutes to thoroughly dry before we do the next part. While we're waiting for that part to dry, we'll carry on and do the side viewing portals. Now, although the parts look similar, there are 4 of that type and 4 of that type. Now the difference is that's got a blunt end and that's got a very pointed end, and they are different. So the first thing to do is we've got to make up pairs. So if we take a pointed one and put it on top of a blunt on top of a blunt on top of a pointed on top of a pointed. Now just slide those as a pair out the way and we deal with the first one. So it's important to keep them in the exact order that you've stacked them on top of each other. So we then take our first pair. I'll just zoom in about that so you can see what I'm doing. Right, that's better. So first thing to do is to turn them up on end so they're together. And it's important they're pushed down firmly and they're in line on the end there. So they're in line where my knife blade is there, and they're in line underneath. Now what we're doing is we're making a ridge, as you can see, that runs down, and that's where some planking will fit on when it's fitted. So we're making like a step there. So this is where it may get a bit mucky, and to be honest, I've only ever done this with super glue, as I find that's the best glue to use. So the important thing to do is to use a paper clip with a bit of super glue on the end of it, and just prise them open gently. Bit of super glue in there while still holding it with your finger and thumb here, and just let it come back together again and squeeze. You should still be level at the back and level on the bottom, and keeping pressure, turn it round gently, push it down again onto the flat surface to make sure the bottom is flat, and we do exactly the same process here again. Slightly open it up with your fingers, a very small amount of thin super glue in between, let it come back together again and gently squeeze with your finger and thumb. And then with the knife blade, because it's important we don't have any glue caught up in between those two parts, so we need to have a recess to put the next part in. So just gently rub your knife while the glue's still wet down to make sure that we've got a clean area. So what we've now done is we've made one of those. So that's one side. So then take the next one. We do exactly the same thing. Again, push down. Make sure the backs are in line with each other. Pick it up. Check you've got a step running all the way along and the base is flat. Holding it firmly. Open up gently with your fingers. Bit of super glue. Hardly anything is needed because when it's fitted to the model it'll be located firmly. Squeeze. Clean off any excess. And again check you've still got your recess. Push him down hard. Turn him round. Pull down gently with your finger, keeping them apart. Just a touch of super glue inside. Push him back. And then with the knife, take the excess out. So we've now made two identical ones, as you can see. So we have a recess looking at us. The next pair we're going to make, again, turn them up, square it off, but this time you'll notice they're the other way round. So I can show you that if I hold you the one we're about to glue, which is this one, and this is one that we've glued before. You can see they are handed. It's like a mirror image because when they go together they will go like that, then there'll be a piece going over on top. So take the pair down hard, make sure the ends are square, and we do exactly the same as before. Lift him up, touch of super glue, squeeze him back down again, clear off the excess, turn him round, push down, make sure it's still flat underneath, and then get your finger in just to hold them apart gently. Small amount of super glue, squeeze it down, take the excess off, again check there's no glue anywhere down there. And we move to the last pair, exactly the same, push down, level at the back, keep it squeezed together with your fingers, open it up gently, small amount, hope this is coming out, squeeze, push him down, pull them apart gently with your fingers, small amount of super glue, come back together, take the excess off, check, clean all the way down. So as you can see, we have a pair like that with a recess there and a recess there, and we have another pair which is exactly the same. As you can see, a recess there and a recess there. Now, it is obviously possible to build these so that they're all the same. If you do, that's a mistake, in which case just drop me an email and I'll send you some replacement parts. Right, this next section is for the twin, and the single is very similar. Because it's a twin, it's got, as you can see, a door each end. So we have two overlays and two doors. So the doors get glued on. That follows in the next section, but because this is a twin, you have to do it twice. So you end up doing two doors. So what next follows is showing you doing just one, but for the twin you do two. Right, next part to assemble is the internal walling and the door. That's the two parts you're going to need. This part is glued onto there so that it's level on the bottom, and the actual bars here nearly line up with those. You'll find that it just sits quite nicely with a little bit showing on each side. It's not important, but the important bit is to get the bottom bit flat. And the way I do this is with a flat edge, whether you've got a ruler or a piece of wood, then lay the internal wall against it so it's flat. Got to make sure this piece is higher, and then your door is going to go up against it and glued in position. So we put glue over there and along the top there. Now you can use PVA or you can use super glue. I tend to use super glue, and I use the thick one. Right, so hold it flat face up on the middle spar as I'm holding there, and then with the thick super glue, just a few dobs. This isn't a stress part, it's just to hold it in position. Nothing too fancy. That's all that's needed. Turn them over, or keeping it pressured against your flat edge. Come in, just touch them against the bottom flat edge. More or less line them up. Oops. Trying to hold it all together at the same time. There we go. And gently push down. Right, there we have the sliding door. It's now attached to the interior wall. The next part shows the fitting of the floor. Now again, because this is a twin, we've got 2 floors, one each end. So again, you double up. Our next job is to take our previously assembled shell and the external outside floor, this part here, we're going to glue that in position there. Again, we use our fingers to hold the outside. We glue up, which I'll show in a moment, drop him on, or drop him on, and then use your fingers on the outside to make sure it's flush, and one finger on there to push it back so it goes up hard against that edge there. Now for this I use the white PVA glue, which is what I want to do, but we don't want to put the glue, fingers and thumbs today, we don't want to put the glue on the outside edges because we don't want to glue it to this piece, we only want to glue it to the flat area there. So I'll just glue this up. Again, it's not a stress point, so it's not that important how much glue we put on there, as long as we put enough to stick it on. I've gone a little bit overboard there, I think. Let's move that around a little bit. Right, yeah, okay. Let's pick up your shell, and just you can go either way around. Just drop him on and maneuver him around with your finger. Remove any excess glue. Make sure it's pushed back and it's flush each side. Give it a gentle squeeze. Again, remove any excess glue. Check again, ends. So make sure it's down fully firmly. It's important to make sure that this edge is flush and this edge is flush. And you remove any excess glue, particularly along there and along there and off the edges. Otherwise that will stop it engaging into the next piece. Right, it's now time to take off the elastic bands. Be careful when you lift them off. You don't want to suddenly flick them and break these 2 pieces off here. It is possible, just have to go very careful. So just roll him up and flick the elastic bands off. The next part shows you fitting the ends. Again, because it's single, it will only show one being fitted. This is a twin, so we do it twice. So again, it will be covered in the next section how to glue it and fit it, but we do one that end, and in this case we will glue the second one on. But the gluing and the setting up follows in the next section. This is just to show you that we've got 2 ends. Well, the next part we're going to fix is the end part onto the single balcony. Now this is glued with you've got a flat side and a side with detail on. Now this is glued with the detail on the inside. As you can see, everything lines up. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 tangs and 1, 2, 3, 4 openings. That drops in on the bottom, and on the top, again, little tangs, little slots. It's the same as we did at the other end. So that drops in there quite nicely. Now this part is really important that it's done with super glue. Because there's not much of an area to glue, and to use a white PVA it will start moving and falling apart. So we're using the runny super glue. We have to, as you can see, if I move it, you can see that that's the 2 joins there, and that's the 2 joins there. So we just have to run some super glue into each of those joins while pushing down. So we'll do that. So that's the 2 big ones. Now when we do the ones on the outside, you need to pull them in with your fingers while pushing down. Maybe best to turn this round actually and do it this way around, that's better. So squeeze in, not so you break it or bend it, just gently squeeze in and push down. And again, just a little bit of super glue into those end joints. The runny one so it soaks in a little bit. Give that 10-15 seconds, and then with the tissue, which I'll just reach for, we don't want any lumps here when it's gone off, so then just wipe any excess off. And then we move up to the 2 little ones at this end. So spinning round makes it a bit easier on the fingers. Again, gently squeeze in. We certainly don't want to squeeze hard, otherwise you will break it. A little bit of the runny one, just in the top there. Keep a bit of pressure on it. Just remove the excess. It's obviously very important that this particular one is left to dry because there's not much glue holding it together at the moment. The next section shows the fitting of the internal. At that point that would in fact have a door attached to it, like that. So we'll assume there's a door on there. On that I show going down inside there. Obviously I haven't glued any of this at the moment, and being a nice snug fit on the back there. But again, because this is a twin, you've got 2 of those to do. One that end and one to go on that end. Right, the next item to add is we did the intersection with the door, and that goes on the inside face there. Now you could either have fitted this before you fit this one, or you can do it in the order I've done, which is the outside first. We need to put some white PVA glue on this one. I'll do a dry run first of all so you can see how it goes. You'll find it will slot in quite nicely, and it will rotate round, and it'll be a very, very nice fit on the top and down the sides and down the base. So just take that one out, and we'll put some white PVA glue on there. My glue's getting a bit low. There we go. Again, it's not a stressed part, so it's not important. Don't really need it down the middle because that's where the doorway is. You certainly need some across the top. Oh dear, I dropped it. And it's bread and butter side down. Right, okay, let's do that again. Well, at least you're seeing all my mistakes. So we want to put some down, move that out of the way, down the sides. Just to sort of hold it in position. Again, not an awful lot. Certainly getting low on my glue. Right. Okay, just dab that around a bit with your finger. And as we did before with the dry run, slot him in. And then it'll take up a natural position. Where he's pushed down on the base. Squeeze them in nice and tight. Make sure you're level each side, which you should be. And just squeeze in with your fingers. Not too hard, otherwise you will break it. And just squeeze where the window frames are. Then rub your finger up and down to remove any excess glue. Well, there's a white PVA, it does dry clear, but you don't want any nasty lumps everywhere, do you? Okay, that's that end done. For the twin version, the end overlays are the same for one end as the single version, which is that one. But obviously for the other end, it's absolutely identical, where for the single one, it's slightly different. So again, following instructions, but obviously we have to fit two of those, which are identical. One there and one on that end there. Right, next item to fit is the rear overlay. So that's two windows there. This is the 1mm rear overlay. It's obvious how it goes on. So for this we use the white PVA glue because we need to be able to move it around and get it in the right position. So I tend to put the PVA glue onto the fixed bit, the big bit. It's easier to do. Again, just a few drops all around the outside edge. Not an awful lot. Around the windows and across, and maybe a few just dabs and dobs, abstract places, and just stipple it up or move it around a little bit with your fingers. A general covering. There we go. And lay this one on top. Use your fingers just to feel all the edges. Make sure it's nice and flush all the way around. And flush across the top. And just give it a little bit of pressure down. Again, make sure we're level there. And we're level there. Clean off any excess glue with your finger. You can still move it around a little bit if need be. And should be level inside the windows and along the base. And of course on the hoop at the top. And then when you're happy, just squeeze it a bit tighter. As I'm doing here. Again, checking all the time that you've got nice flush surfaces all the way around. And don't forget, you've got these little notches that stick out. They are needed, so don't sand those away or remove those. That's part of the alignment that's needed when we come to put the sides on. So that's nicely done. So we can now move over now to the other end. Right, here we are at the other end. This time we've got the big opening, and the big opening we do exactly the same and glue up that surface, drop him on, and then using your fingers to make sure it's aligned all the way around. So I'll do that now. Just wait for me glue to come out. Here we go. So around the edge, same as we did the other end. Around the window, a few abstract blobs. Rub it in with your finger or dab it in, stipple it, whatever phrases you want to use. Right. Okay. So just like the dry run, drop it on top. Line it up down the edges, along the bottom, across the top, in between the windows. Again, wipe the excess off, use your fingers as I do, or you can use a tissue. It's entirely up to you. Got plenty of time. Still move it around. Again, we're looking for a flat flush surface up each side, across the hoop, in the window area. That's all looking good. Could come down a bit that side. There we go. And start to put a bit of pressure on it now to bring it together. Checking all the time all the surfaces are flat and flush. The important ones are the sides, the roof, and inside the window. If you've got those right, then all the other ones should line up as well. Right, having done that, that's now important that that's put away to dry for a good 10 minutes. Side overlays for the twin. Bear in mind that you can put them on upside down. We've got a thick area and we've got a thin area. The thick area goes towards the base. So that's how it goes on, and we'll line up flush on the end when you've got the end overlays on. So we do that for that side, one on the other side. The way of fitting it and lining it up is exactly the same as we do on the single balcony end, so that's what follows next. Right, the next items we're going to fit are the sides. Sides look similar, but they are very much different. Try and explain differences. So they look the same there. If you can carefully see, we have some little notches there. They're not there, they're at the other end. In fact, what they are is they're a mirror image of each other. So you can put the wrong one on the wrong side. So to make sure you don't, if you lay it out like I've got it now, and you take this one, which has got the notches at the top and a thick area there. And the thick area goes there. Now we have those two little notches here and here, which I pointed out to you before. And they're to help with the alignment of this piece here. So it goes down and rests on those notches. Then you drop it down. And it should be flush at each end. Just keep a bit of pressure on it. It should be flush down there, flush along there, and flush along the bottom edge. So that's what we'll now do is we will glue that in position. Again, we'll use the white glue. And you can see where it goes. So that's where we need the white glue, around those areas, all around the edges. But obviously none will be needed in that area there. So again, I put the white glue on the actual frame itself. So we go across the top, down the edge, bottom, up the edge again, down either side of the inspection hatch all the way to the bottom, and don't forget to go down the edge where the single balcony is, and a few little abstract blobs. Right, and stipple that in with your finger. Making sure you've got a good coverage at each end. So that's down there and down there. Right, and take our piece again, double check, thick edge down there, load it in. So we just touch on the piece that sticks up there, and just drop him down. And using your fingers, just centralize it left and right. Push it down again so it's up against the little notches. Check it should be flush along the top, down the sides, inside and inside, and flush down there and flush along the bottom. And just a little bit more pressure, squeeze it down. Again, checking all the time that it's flush all the way around. Still move it around a little bit at this stage. The glue hasn't quite grabbed it yet. Go around with a knife in a moment and clean up the excess glue. Important thing is to make sure it's stuck down first. This is one of the more difficult models to do because you've got such a large overlay to stick on. Okay, now we can use the knife just to sort of remove any excess glue that's sticking out. As I said before, it will glow, will dry clear. Try and clear out from that area. So we have to put in some bits in there in a moment. So we don't really want the glue. Oh, drop my knife. Oh, right. And again along the bottom here, try and get rid of the excess glue. Again, when we come to glue in the inspection hatch, we've got a nice clean area to glue to. Bottom looks good. Well, that went very well. That looks very good indeed. So we now repeat that on the other side. So if the other side went all right, then obviously you've got the other hand here. Again, we do exactly the same. Notches, do a dummy run first, touch it with the notches, drop it down. Use your fingers to position it left and right. Run your finger up, should line up. Should line up. You can always move it around a little bit and line up on that edge, on the back. So we can now do that one. Right, so I've turned it over now, so we can now do this side. So again, we do the same. And the glue comes out. Oh, I'm really scraping the barrel now. Right. Oh, here we go. Okay. Oops, don't want any there, do we? As before, stipple it in with your finger so you get good coverage. This may not be the best way, but it's the way I do it. We all have our own little ways of building models, but this seems to work for me. As before, take our piece up against the little notches, dropping down, make sure it's square, that way and that way. Again, pull it down towards the notches, a little bit of pressure, make sure we're lined up there, across the top. Still lined up down the bottom, and we come to this end, lined up on the balcony, and make sure the post is lined up there. Again, remove the excess glue. A bit more pressure on it, hold it in place so the glue begins to grab. I'm just wittering away to myself. Maybe useful what I'm saying, but I expect most of you already done this before. As before, try and remove the excess glue from these areas. quick look around, make sure there's no glue blobs. Right, that's both sides done. Right, so our next task now is to put the side inspection hatches on. Right, now we're going to fit the side inspection hatches on, or duckets, or whatever phrase is used. Now, if you remember, when we made up these pieces, they were handed, so it's important we get a left and a right. As you can see, there's a ridge there, so if you lay that one there, and then get the other one, which is the opposite of that one, again has got a ridge. Now the way these fit on is, we fit one like that, and the other one goes like that. That then allows these pieces to drop into that ridge, as you can see. And then we have one of these, which is the top. It's important you get one of each. As you can see, they're different lengths. And we have a short plank and a short plank. So we need to position them as we're going to use them, which is the big one is going to go down the bottom with the short plank down the bottom. So we'll put that one there. And this one goes with the short plank up. And this is the short piece we'll put in there. And last we have the top, which goes into there. Now we've got to assemble this in the right order. And for this I do use a super glue. I use a thick one. Just get my spreading tool ready. Right, so the first thing to do is to put a dob of thick super glue in the top there. That then allows this piece to be glued in. So just put it at a slight angle, and then we go just a couple of little blobs of super glue down the edge. Same on the other side. Then we take one side and we put a little bit of super glue just on the top there, as you can see. We drop him in. We push him up against there and make sure that it's upright. I'm going to move quite quickly here because of the super glue. Again, oops, put it on the right side, Jerry, up there. Drop him in so it fits in there, and again the edges are pushed over and again pushed up against the roof. Now we've still got a bit of time left, so this isn't glued, this is purely position. Drop in the top piece, squeeze together, and you can still rock it left and right to make sure that it's upright. So you've got a gap, you can see it there, so the overhang is the same, and push that one down. And then while we've still got chance, take this one at this end, and as you can see, if you slide it down, it pushes the two apart, and that'll hold that apart there. Again, don't glue it in. Keep checking all the time, because we'll glue those two pieces in a moment when everything is dry and we're in a happy position. Super glue, it doesn't take long, so we can now whip our pieces out. Our top piece out. So now we can glue in those two pieces. Again, use the thick super glue, little dob at the top, each side. I tend to put one halfway down. smear on the actual bend, so that picks up both of them. One over there, halfway down again. Again, it's a non-stress point. And a little dollop at the bottom on each side. You could do this with a PVA glue, and then making sure that's the shorter version one with the short plank at the top. Drop him in and push him down. And then this is the longer one with the shorter plank at the bottom. Feed him down until there's a slight gap at the bottom, and then drop him back into the recess and push down with your fingers. And then just remove any super glue that may be oozing up through. And there you have your inspection hatch done. You may have a bit of extra super glue at the top there just to remove with a knife before it goes off. Make sure it's pushed firmly down. And then any glue that's showing along the joint there, just pull out with a knife. There shouldn't be any. And there we have one inspection hatch done. So we now do exactly the same over on the other side. So again, if we lay out our pieces, so we've got the recess over there, we've got the recess pointing towards me, we have the roof little lid, we have our short one with the short plank ready to go on there, we have the long one with the short plank ready to go on the bottom. So we do that exactly the same way. Right, so we do this one now the same. I've zoomed in a little bit, may make it a bit easier for you. So again, a bit of super glue at the top. Put the roof in, slight angle, and then some little blobs of super glue. I'm using the thick glue down each side. Some at the bottom. We take our first side. I've got glue all over my hands. Just a little bit on the top. Offer him up. Bring the roof down. Make sure he's pushed in firmly and nearly upright. That's close enough. Do the same with the other side. And then use these as a reference just to get them in the right position. We don't glue these in yet, and then we can use that one to slide down just to push the pieces out. And again, make sure it's upright. Push that over gently. So we've got the same gap all the way round. We can take these off. We can now glue those in. So again, a little bit of glue, top corner, halfway down. Glue, don't really want it on the outside. Oh, I stuck my finger to it. So again, just on the bendy curvy bit, halfway down, halfway down, blob at the bottom, and blob at the bottom. Try not to get any on that face. Right, so again, it's the short one, plank short at the top. Load him in, push him down. Longer one, short plank at the bottom, feed him in, slight small gap at the bottom, drop him back, and he'll drop into the recess. And a rub, get rid of any excess glue. Keep your fingers moving, otherwise you'll be part of it. Remove any glue with a knife. Check down the sides. And that's the other inspection hatch done. If you're actually building the twin veranda guards coach, that's with the veranda at both ends, then the actual step arrangement is somewhat different, because obviously there's a veranda at both ends, so you have a step at each end. So the bit I'm about to show you now is for the twin veranda one. That's the one that looks like that. Now we run through the same process of fitting the steps as we do on the single veranda one. So that's what follows this particular bit of video, is the single veranda. So you need to follow that as well as looking at what I'm about to do here. So we have a different arrangement on the double veranda. The actual framework and the step. The actual step goes onto the framework so that you can actually see the framework. So it goes underneath it. So that's the first one we glue on. The way of gluing it on I show in the next section. So once that's glued onto there, we then have to glue the second step on, which again, same principle, but goes higher up. As you can see, it slots in and goes underneath, again, the framework, as you can see there. So again, so you can see the framework, the step goes underneath. Again, how that's glued on, the best way of doing it, I show in the next part of the video. This is purely showing you the difference between the twin veranda and the single veranda. Right, while we're waiting for that part to dry, we'll go ahead and do the running boards. They are left-handed and right-handed, so it's important you do a dry run first. So that's the two frames, which are different. You've got to pair that end and a pair that end. Doesn't matter which one you start with. And the running boards themselves are also different. So to make sure you've got the right one first, make sure that you can in fact line everything up. As you can see, notches and holes all line up, so that's a pair, that's good. Now this part goes underneath like that, so you actually see on top of the running board, you actually see the framework. Now the way we do this is with a thick glue, or you could use the thin, makes no difference. I just put a little daub where each little notches on the end. Slowly working your way along. Put one in the middle on the ends. This will be reinforced later on, so this is just initially to hold it in position. Okay, right, so now what we do is, and this is a crucial, critical bit, lay them down onto a flat surface, keep it moving a little bit, bring the other one up to it, and push it on top. and then just keep it moving so it doesn't stick to the baseboard, and keep pressure down and that way at the same time, and move it all together. You'll find it goes off quite quick. And then turn it upright, and then with a knife blade just gently push down on the framework onto the running board to make sure it's glued down. And you shouldn't see any gaps between the running board and the frame or on the back. And then just have a look down the eye line down it to make sure that it's at 90 degrees. If it's not, lay it down on the running board and just tweak it a little bit with your hand. It will still move a little bit, although it's super glue. So you've got to work fairly quickly. Have another look. Again, move it if need be. We'll flex a bit. Oh, that's looking all right for me. Right, now we repeat that on the other one. So put that one to one side. Again, do a check. Framework. Does it line up? Do all the holes line up with the slots? Yes, they do. Out with the super glue again. Just along each notch, as we did before. Just on the ends. As I said before, not an awful lot is needed, just to locate it. There we go. Again, lay it down flat surface, running board onto it, keep it moving. Make sure we're engaged all the way along. Pressure that way and that way still. And stand it up. Again, a little bit of pressure with the knife blade to make sure it's pushed down firmly onto the running board. Check, no gaps. Have a look again, make sure it's at 90 degrees. If it's not, just flex it again a little bit. Have another look, make sure it's at 90. Again, no gaps. Put that one to one side. Right, so the next one we're going to fit is the second running board. Now this goes on the end that's got the double and the double. Again, it slots in, as you can see, same as the bottom one, but onto the two pieces there. Again, we take our super glue, we just put a little bit underneath, that's enough. Laying down flat, offer in, hold it there, give them a little move. Check it. This one's a bit more tricky. Where are we? There we are. Right, so I just want to push it down with a knife. Make sure it's pushed back in as well. And the same for the other end there. Again, have a look down it, make sure it's set at a 90-degree angle again. Still move a little bit if need be. Again, don't want any gaps. So that's done. And move on to the other one. Do a dummy run again. Make sure it fits. Which it does. It sticks to my finger. Bit of super glue. On the inside. Keep it moving. Again, push down with the knife, each end. Visual check. Make sure it's sat at 90. And we've got no gaps. So that one's okay. So the next job to do is to reinforce it all along the back. And for that we use a runny super glue. One that's like water. So I'll just get some ready. Right, okay, what we do is take the runny one and just sort of rub it in along the back face so that it runs down in between any gaps that's there. Spread it on quite thinly. Just gives it a little bit more strength because it does stick out somewhat. Right, and when that's done, don't put it down that way because you'll glue it to the base. Obvious, I know. But lay it that way up to one side and move on to the other one. A bit too much there. Right, and put that to one side as well to dry. Right, before we fit the undercarriage, it's easier to fit the axle box covers before we fit the undercarriage. So you'll need the two parts, which are shown here. That's one of them. I'll just sort out the other. Both identical. And you'll need some axle box covers, which are these funny looking things. And it's a case of putting a bit of PVA glue on the half moon there, and then just with a knife just drop it down and glue that in position. So you do that in all four positions. As I say, that's much easier to do rather than when it's actually on wagon itself. So if you'd like to go ahead and do that. This next section deals with the undercarriage. The difference between the 32 and the 45 are the number of parts that are fitted and the actual location of which slots it uses in the base. So the first bit I'm going to show you is for the 45mm. There's only a few parts that are different. It's fairly obvious as we go along. So this first bit is for 45. So you take part number 5, you put a bearing in from behind, a bearing in from behind, then you take part number 6, you load that on top, you'll find that they slot together, and then turn it over and put that down, and do the same for the other one. So the bearing goes in from behind, so you can see the number 5, and then load number 6 on top. So again, that's what you look like, and turn it over. So that's the change between the 45 and the 32 for that particular section. So we then have to glue in the bearings, and that's covered in the next section, because from now on it's basically the same as the 32mm version. The difference is though that because the 45 is a wider track, there's less amount of undercarriage to put on the outside. So in fact it only goes from number 6, which is the outer one, plus 1, which is that one, going in. It's fairly obvious. You follow the same number sequence as you do for the 32mm, except obviously you will run out of parts because they're not supplied for the 45. Try and make it a bit more sensible or logical so you understand. So this is for the 45mm, so I've got a 6 there, I've got a 5 there, so the next one I would have is a 4, that goes on the inside there. This is the inside here, so that's a 4. Then we will add a 3, which again is this one, so that will go there. Then we will add a 2, which I'll just get hold of. And there we have a 2. And then on the outside, we fit the most outer one, which doesn't have any numbers on it, and that goes on the outside. So that makes up that pack. And you can see on the inside, there's 2 little slots, and that's to take the spreader bar that goes across to the bars on the other side. So that's all the parts that are needed for the 45mm. The 32mm version has a lot more in the pack, which you'll see later on. So now we move over to the underframes. You need to find underframes that are labelled 5 and 6 and 4 ball races. So the first thing we do is to drop a ball race, so you can see the 5 in from the back and in from the back, and turn that over so you now don't see the number, and pick up a part number 6, turn that over so you don't see the number, and put 5 on top of 6 with the ball races facing down. So we do that again, ball race in the back of 5, in the back of 5, turn it over, pick up part 6, turn it over, and then put 5 on top of 6, so the ball race drops in to 6 as well, and lay him down. And then using the very thin super glue, we have to glue in the ball race. So just a smear around it, hardly anything, 'cause it will capillary tube, or whatever the phrase is, wick in. And any excess, quick wipe with the finger, turn them round, and then we can go all the way around now. again, quick wipe of the finger to remove any excess. And we put those to one side. So what we've done is we've glued the ball race into the former, but we haven't glued the two formers together. So put that aside to dry. Right, now we're about to assemble the underframes. So the two you did with the ball races in, you can now separate those. You'll notice that part number 6 has got two little notches each end. If you take your frame, you'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and same the other end, 4. Now the inner ones are used for 32mm and the outer ones are used for 45. So as we're building a 32 version, you take item number 6 with the notches, and this is done with the wording always facing outwards. So we load him in to the notch at that end, the inner notch, and then we slowly move him out. As you can see the way it's bending, that's okay, until this notch, this end, drops in, and that's gone in. So that's 6 facing out, and we do exactly the same on the other side. So again, we take our item number 6, we put it in the inside notch with the writing facing out, and we push him out, got to bend again until he clicks in. So that's the first frame in. Now when we start to build the frames up, the numbers are always facing out and go up. So the next one that goes on here is going to be 7, 8, 9 and so on, and going inwards from 6 we go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So after number 6 then we fit number 5, which is the one we did before with the ball races in. So that's number 5. So number 5 goes in, and we put number 5 the other side, again numbers facing out, so we clip those in. Next we have to find our number 4, which are those two pieces there. So again we put number 4 in with the number facing out, number 4, number faces out, then we come to these two parts, which is 3. We got a 3A and a number 3. They are the same, but they're mirror images of each other, as you can see. That slopes up, that slopes down. It's not critical which one goes where, but you just need to make a note of which one you put on which side. So 3A, so remember which is 3A, and the A and the 3 and the wording goes out. So if we put him that side, what we want to do is just put a little mark on there, so we know that's got the A side. So we take the normal 3, and 3 goes into there. And we've got ones labelled 2, which have got the little slots in. So it all falls apart. Oh dear. Right, this is where you need 14 hands. So we drop number 2 in, and number 2 in. Now in this particular model, there is no number 1. So there is no number 1 in this one. So we then take the two little stretchers and we drop them in to the slots. Gauge one end in first, and just push them up, they'll drop in. Now we take our wheels. We have to engage each wheel in each end. Now to do this, tend to put one in one side, and then using your fingers just push it all apart and then let it all come back together. So we turn it round and we do exactly the same the other end. Drop the wheel in, engage it in the ball races, push it back together, make sure the other end drops in as well, and that's our wheel section in there. Now the next important bit to do before we build up any more is to actually lubricate the ball races. To do that, I've got a little syringe here. Can we see? Yep. Okay, so a little bit of oil, hardly anything, just a drop onto the balls. That's it. That's lubrication each side. So we can now start to build up coming outside. So we had number 6. So we then have to put 5. So we had number 6. The numbers, as we know, come up as we come out. So we're looking for 7, 8, and so on. So the first thing to do is to find number 7. I have here. So this is number 7, or number 7. So it goes on there again, facing out. Number 7, facing out. And then number 8. Again, number 8. The writing facing out. Then number 9. Writing facing out. So we got as far as 9 each side, and the last one, which is number 10, doesn't have any numbers on it at all. That's the piece that we added, the little axle boxes. So that makes up our underframe. I'll make sure we're all pushed down each side. I'll make sure the wheel still turns. Now what we tend to do is to put a thin glue. If you can, so I got the camera right. Yeah, that's all right. So we now run a thin glue along that edge there. And work it in. So it goes down between all the underframes. Then we need to pull that together. This is where these clamps come in quite useful. As you can see, doesn't need to be there for very long. That's plenty long enough. Then with the tissue we wipe the excess off. And then we can add just a little bit down into the corner there. And then we move on to the other side. using our super glue, the thin one. I think I'm about to run out. I'll have to get a new one in a moment. Again, work it in. Using a clamp. Put it together. Long enough. Clamp off. Wipe off the excess glue. Put some down into the corner. Then we can go around to the other end. Make sure the wheel still rotates. So turn it around. And we now do exactly the same at this end. Well, I've now got a new tube of glue. So we do exactly the same. Yeah, it's a new tube, it's coming out everywhere, right. So again, bring some in onto the end here. So it runs down in between. Help it a little bit. And clamp it together. Wait for the glue to go off. Doesn't take long. Okay. Then tissue, wipe off the excess. Add a little bit down into the corner. Move over to the last side. Make sure again we're all pushed down flat. Using the runny glue. Run along the edge. And work it in a bit. Clamp it. And wipe off the excess. Now we need to go around and reinforce it a little bit. So using the runny glue into the corner, very end, just under the wheel, in the corner of the stretcher plate, center, on the very top, being careful not to get it on the wheel. Moving along halfway, repeat down this end, into the corner on the stretcher, middle, underneath the wheel, top of the stretcher, and underneath, down in the middle. So we now need to leave that to dry thoroughly, again 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next section. Right, next bit is to add the little brass links that link the braking detail together. So one goes in one hole there, and one goes in the other hole on there. They're linked by a bit of heat shrink tubing. Just slide over one, back over to the other. So you just want to make sure that they're not protruding from each side. Heat shrink is roughly in the middle. This isn't crucial, this just gives it a little bit more strength. And then we need to add just a little bit of the runny super glue. Where it passes into the frame. And then we need to shrink the heat shrink, which I do with a little lighter. Just play it underneath and bend the tubes a little bit until they line up with each other. Makes it look a little bit neater. There we go. Right, we now have to fit the running boards. It's very important to work out that the one with the 2 steps goes at the end with the single balcony, and that literally goes in and is glued in position like it is there. So it's glued on these edges here and 2 little areas that go onto the axle box. Right, so we'll put some super glue on there. Now I tend to put it is at each end where the strut is that comes down off of each one. And then just a bit on each area where it touches the axle box. Right, again double check you've got the right one. The twin steps is at the end where the opening is. Push it in and drop it down, keeping it firmly pushed up inside. Down onto the axle boxes, which locates excuse me, the lower bit. There we have our running board in. Now we turn over. We do exactly the same with the other one. Obviously, if the other one was right, then this one's bound to be right. So you've got 2 steps, which is the same end. Make sure it drops in and will go down all right, which it will. So let's put some glue onto that one. You can use the thick or the thin for this one. I'm using the thin at the moment, or you could use the PVA if you wanted to. It's up to you. The super glue, it all happens instantaneously, so you can move on. Right, I glued it. Push it up in and down. Again, making sure it's pushed up firmly and is down onto the axle boxes. Right, and there we have both running boards in. Next we're going to show the addition of the uprights. Because this is, or for the twin balcony version, you don't have long ones going up, so you have 2 short ones that go on each end. So that's what you need for the twin. For the single, the instructions follow on how to fit the short ones and the long ones. Right, now it's time to fit the external strapping bits. And we have 2 short ones, and we have 2 long ones. The long ones go the other end, and the short ones go this end. So we'll do the short ones first of all. So we put a smear of super glue down there, and then we offer it up. We've got a thick line and a thin line, and it goes between the thick and the thin. So it's level at the bottom and then level at the top. And we have the two bolts down to the bottom which should line up with the two planks going across there. And then we do exactly the same again. It goes between the thick and the thin, running up through there. So we glue those in position. So I will now do that. But to do that, unfortunately, I can't film it at the same time because my head will get in the way. I'll do my best. Let's see if we can do this. So thick super glue I use. Just a few little dabs down it. And then rub that in. Make sure you got them up the right way. And then line him up on the bottom. And he should be flush at the top. It should go between the small line and the big line. And push down. That one went alright. Now we do the one on the other side. Thick glue. Spread it down. And making sure the two bolts are down the bottom. Line it up again on the thin line and the thick line. I should be flush at the top. And push them down. Right, now we do exactly the same on the other end. But we're going to remember with this end is there's a curve there. And if you look at the two pieces, put them in the right way. You've got your two bolts which go down the bottom, but there's a slight chamfer at the top. It's important that the chamfer lines up with the chamfer of the roof. So you've got to get the right one on the right side. And again, this one lines up between the little line there and the big line there, so it fits in there like that. All the way up to there. And this one does exactly the same. So we glue those in the same as we glued the ones in on the other side. So I need to get in close to do this one. So if you'd like to do that, because I can't film that at the same time. Right, I've now stuck my two on. If by any reason you glue it a little bit too far in that direction so it stands proud, as I've done on that one, it's important that it's level with the curve, otherwise the roof won't fit. So if you could have done what I've done here, just with a small file, just very gently take off the excess. Use a fine sandpaper. Until it's flush with the top. Doesn't matter about the colour change because the roof goes on there. It's important you get a nice fit with the roof. So we've now fitted all the parts all the way around. So all we now have left to do is to fit the roof and the couplings. The couplings are straightforward. They go into the slot, nut and washer on the back, and then you adjust for the height to suit your particular railway that you're using. But we'll now move on to how we do the roof. Right, we're going to start with construction of the jig that will support the roof when we come to finish the brake wagon and fit the roof. It's a fairly simple unit to start with. There are some similar items in the kit, so it's important to sort them out. They'll be labelled with the word jig, and you'll have 2 pieces with holes and another 3 with slots, and you'll have 5 long pieces with slots in, with again the word jig on. So it's fairly obvious how these go together. So put the 2 end ones to one side for the moment, take the ones with the slots, and they literally slot together. And if you do the inner ones first, you need to do this on a flat surface, makes it a lot easier. Doesn't matter which way round they go because they're all symmetrical pieces. And then what you will need is a piece of A4 paper that will allow you to set it up. Right, set a piece of A4 paper. This is to set it all up at 90 degrees. So we should have built that on the piece of paper, so I'll now put it on there. Okay, let's just make sure you can see what I'm doing. Let's move the camera a little bit towards me and the paper a little bit away. Right, so now having got the cross pieces on, we can now add the ends. Again, a bit of pressure, and you'll find that all the holes will line up. And you do the same with the other end. Jiggle it around a bit till they all go in. And then while keeping some pressure there, move it down to the side of the paper and set it up on the edge so it's following the edge of the paper. And then we take our super glue. Now we just have to glue that in position. So a little bit just on each end to start with. Just let it run down. Again, check that it's on the piece of paper at 90, and then go at the other end. Just a little dot, and the glue will run down into the joint. A little bit of pressure. Again, we can still move it around a little bit. Not too crucial. And then we can literally just go down and do the bits in between. And then just one last check that it still is at 90 degrees. And then carefully put that to one side. And we'll move on to the next section of building the wagon itself. Right, this next section details the fitting of the internal structure to support the roof. We've already just built the jig for the roof, so this is the next bit. Now I'll show you this on the double balcony version first, and then I'll show you the changes for if you're doing the single balcony version first. So we've got our carcass, which normally would be completely built with the overlays on, but what I'm going to show you now doesn't really matter. And you have the formers that go inside. So we've got 2 with lines engraved on them and 2 with holes. And you'll also need the linking parts that link them together, which I'm hunting for at the moment. So you need the 3 linking parts. You need some tape, and this is what we do. Now you've got to go careful with these because they're already engraved and slightly cut through on that part, because that's where we break them off after when we finish the job. So dealing with the 2 compartment one first, we put one in at that end and just slide it down until it hits the bottom. And then we've got to put a little piece of tape in there to hold that in position. So the best way to do that is a little piece of tape at the top. And it's just to lock it in. And then we do the same at the other end. Except I just dropped that one. Oh dear, okay. Right, well, we come again. So again we take the other one with the holes in it. We drop him down. And again a small piece of tape just to hold him down firmly on the base. Then we take the ones with the engraving and they go at the very end. And again it goes down until it touches the bottom. Now for this one, what we've forgotten to do is before we put these in, you'll see there's a line in the middle there. We need to continue that line across the top with a pencil until you can see it on the other side. And just make a mark. And then with them in there, then I would tape it on the top surface there, so it's pulled in. And I would also be inclined to add a couple of small pieces of tape down the bottom, just to make sure it's held in firmly. So we do that at the other end. So I'll take the tape off that I did. We do the same. Look at where the mark is in the middle. Continue it across and bring it up on the other side. It'll be obvious in a moment why we do that. So again, bit of tape, hold them against the back. And then a bit of tape on the legs. And we're ready to go. Now you need your roof, which is this part here. And you'll see it's got serrations on it, and it bends in that direction so the serrations fit inside. So that will go over the top like that. Now this is where we use the jig that you've made previously. Now I'm going to show you, the next part of the video is how to put all this lot together, but it won't actually be this particular coach that we're going to play with. It'll be the chorus version, which is very, very similar. What it means is that you lay your jig, this will be obvious later on, jig, roof, and then you will lay this part. Bear in mind we've now got the center point marks, making sure that everything stays together. What we've forgotten to do is to actually glue, my fault, we've got to glue in those arms there. So that's the job we have to do next. So we run some super glue into each of those joints, and that'll hold that firmly, but not so it ends up super gluing it to the carcass. Right, so having done that, that's laid on the jig. We then turn this upside down and we lay this on the roof, and we line up our center lines at each end on the roof so that we're in line that way, and we have the same amount of roof sticking out each side. And then we apply pressure on the top to push it down into the jig. The next part of the video will explain everything that we then do after that. Right, that's for the two balcony one. Now the single balcony one, I'll just take all this off a moment, is the same principle, except you don't have so many internal pieces. So I'll just whip that out. and see what we're doing. Right, single balcony version, you'll have that part the same, but this section here runs all the way through to the end. So what you'll end up with is you'll have just one of those with a marked end, and you'll have two of those with holes in, and nothing else. Now what you'll do there is, as we did before, the one with the scribed ends goes in the end there with the scribing facing in. You'll then add one with holes to that location there. Now bearing in mind, because it's a single balcony, that piece won't be there. So you have a flat end there. So you then take the other one with the holes and put it up that end. Hold them in with tape as we did before. And your pieces that will now go between there and there will be longer than these. Right, I've now so that's your three stretchers. So you super glue those in position, all the joints, and then you turn it over and you do exactly the same thing. We've obviously previously built the roof jig. Now this is a little bit different to the jig is the same on either the chorus with the ducket or without the ducket, but the actual roof piece, as you can see, is different. It has a small piece added, or part of it, which is the part that covers the ducket. So we lay this, sorry for the camera shake, but it's the only way I can get it all in while I'm trying to film and show you what we're doing. So we position the roof more or less central onto the jig, and then we take our wagon and we knock it all over. We take our wagon, we turn him upside down, and we position him onto the roof. Now what we have to do is to set up, I'll try and bring this into focus so you can see, and I'll just refocus that. Right, so what we have to try and do is to make sure the roof is centrally in the jig, which it is, and then we maneuver the wagon bit until we can just see a straight line that's engraved, and that the line engraved on the roof is central to the pin that sticks through there. So having got that end right, we then go down to the other end and we repeat the same process. So again, I'll just focus it. I'll try and do this while I hold it. Now we're a bit out this side, I think. We would need to move it very, very slightly, as you can see, which I'll do. And we're in line with the line. So we then go back and check the other end. Where are we? There we go. And as soon as we're happy with all of that, we then apply some weights to the top, which I'll just go ahead and do. Right, as you can see, I've added a tin of beans, and if we look at the bend down the end, you can see it's started to flex it down. I can just, as you can see, just add a little bit more. So we need to add quite a heavy weight to this. In my case, I add a very large toolbox, which I will now go and add, and then you can see that it's really pushing it down. Right, as you can see, I've added a very large toolbox. And if we come round and we focus in, you can see now that it's really pushed it down. But as you can see, I've made a classic mistake and I've fitted it round the wrong way. So make sure you haven't done that. As you can see, the actual part that sticks out is on the wrong side, so we'll have to redo that. Right, I've now corrected it. I think it's only fair you should see that I do make mistakes. You can now see that we now have the correct way orientation so that it lines up with the part of the roof that protrudes out. And we are lined up down the middle, and we're lined up down the middle. So we can now start to add our glue. Again, I use a super glue here, and I'll try and do this so that you can see what I'm doing. So we tend to put the glue into the corner there, and then at the end, so it soaks down in, and on the other corner, remember this is the underside, so this isn't seam, and then we work our way along on each of the ribs, putting a bit each side. So this is the same as doing the non-ducket version, but there'll be a slight change in a moment when we get to the other side. Where are we? One down the end. Right, I'm just now going to turn the camera over so we can see what's going on the other side. Now over here, let's bring it into focus. Right, you'll see that the isn't quite touching the former. So what you'll have to do is just a little bit of pressure with your finger on there when you run the super glue in on the very end. And then you'll have to hold that there, or you can find something to pack underneath it, some plasticine, whatever you've got available, or some small blocks of wood just to hold that up while the glue's setting. So I'll go ahead and do that. So as you can see, I've now added the glue into that area. So I can add a little bit of pressure. And as time is my own, I'm now going to hold that for about 5 minutes until the glue has gone off. And then we can work our way down the other side as we did before. You can just see in there, and actually put the super glue onto each of the ribs. So when you come back, I'd have done all the gluing, and we'll have then waited 15-20 minutes for the glue to go off, and then we'll take all the weights off, and hopefully the roof will have glued itself to the formers. Right, so I've left it about 15 minutes, so now we have the moment of truth. So the first thing to do is to remove the toolbox, and then remove the tin of beans, and then hopefully it hasn't all stuck together, and we'll just lift it up. Right, I'll take the jig out of the way, and right, that's looking promising. So the next stage to do is to go in with a knife or a steel rule and to remove the bits of tape, which I'll go ahead and do. So I've now removed my bits of tape. So if we then gently slide out, put the wagon to one side, Now we have to break off all these stalks. As you can see, they're engraved on one side but not on the other. So the best thing to do is to, if we start at this end, bend them away from the engraving. So just gently, and if you bring them back up again, they'll snap off. If you do that, working your way down, you need to do this when the glue is thoroughly dry. Don't worry about bits sticking up, we'll sort that out afterwards. So work your way down. And then obviously we've got lots of bits sticking up, so just with a pair of tin snips or pin snips, wire snips, just clean all that up. And we can now do a trial fit, but you have to make sure that the glue is thoroughly dry, otherwise you'll end up gluing the roof permanently to the actual wagon itself. So I'll just remove the bits of tape out that I've got in there. So it's obviously which way the roof goes. And that drops down quite nicely.